Hello, everyone. Welcome to Epic Work Items Sync Weekly. It's 16th May, and the first item it is regarding workstream 2. And Nicholas, you want to verbalize the updates?
Sure. So we are currently merging the merge request that enables the whole syncing by default. Thanks, Felipe, for merging this. So yeah, this is not a default behavior. We remove all the feature flags. There is only a small cleanup issue, and we are having discussions of thinking like how, in a worst case scenario, we could resync all the epics to the work item for customers where something went wrong. But this is the only thing that is left over in this whole epic. So yeah, good progress there. And actually, not much progress because we have it done for like 2 weeks now, but we're now enabling it by default. Can go to the next one.
So I think it's me with the workstream 3. So because Alexandru is not around, the update from the last meeting, I think is the one we were not present, Nicolas and me. We did change some of the steps we had around the workstream 3 in order to save one milestone, to not have to wait until an extra additional milestone. We did some changes. We didn't have a lot of time left in 17.0, but we did manage to merge what we wanted. So we have unblocked all the following migrations. So that's great. Help everyone that helps. Thank you so much. Adam as well with his reviews and answering a lot of my questions. And now the next steps are getting the backfilling merged. A lot of them are in progress or in review. I think we have all the issues covered. One of them is assigned to Alexandru, but he's back next week, I think. So we should probably be good to finish this milestone.
Any questions?
Which step is this in on the rollout plan? Alexandru mentioned that there's the first main migration, then the second step is like the additional fields, and then the third is like cleanup. Is this step 1?
Yes, the main migration was blocking all the other migrations because we needed to make sure that every epic had a work item assigned to it before we could actually fill the other data, but it would be missing. The epics that didn't have a work item would be incomplete, that would require running the backfilling again. So now we not only did the first migration, but we verified that no epic can be created without a work item. So we can work around that. The following migrations and the code can be assured that each epic has a work item. That's why it was quite complex and required a lot of MRs, but we're at that stage that hopefully the not null constraint was the last step, and that will be merged soon. So the focus now is the backfilling of the data of the fields, the epic fields. That's what is in progress and listed in the point 2.
And we are pretty good at this because at this stage, because we have most of them in review, we can likely start merging them in next week. And then we still have like 3 weeks left of the whole milestone to see if anything is not working from the syncing part, which we hope we have covered by now. So it gives us some time to test the stuff and have it ready.
All of this year was going to be done in, I guess, 17.2, because the first important migration was going to be done in 17.1. So all that effort last week was to move everything 1 milestone sooner, and otherwise we couldn't be doing the backfilling now. Next step, I think, is you again, Nicolas.
Yeah, hybrid syncing. We paused a bit, but we still have done some work. So like we now prepare everything for hybrid syncing, like the syncing from work items to epics. We are running these diff checks to make sure in production that these actually match the same data. We found a few issues with the reordering, like the relative position and so on. We're going to fix that. And also next 2 weeks, it will be find more bugs in that direction. Although code-wise, it's way cleaner than the whole Epic code that we have. So it's a bit easier to reason about. And then we will reverse the feature flag and make it like the default logic to sync from the work item to the legacy Epic. And then we roll it out to testing groups as we have already on staging. And we continue with delegation work. Like this is the main focus, I guess, after next week or next 2 weeks. What we have regarding like a blocker maybe for 17.2 at least, latest, you can lock discussions on work items, but you can't lock discussions on epics. So theoretically, when someone locks an epic work item, you could still post notes on a epic, like I say, epic. And we should like make a decision like how to proceed on that side. Like, should we modify the REST endpoint to not allow posting notes on legacy epics if the work item is locked? Like, is this a breaking change or not? It's debatable. Yeah, that's something we need to decide on.
The scope is only public projects, public namespaces. So that's what locking just prevents commenting on public projects if you are not a project member. So my first question is, does creating a new comment on an issue or epic via the REST API require membership? It requires a private token, but I'm not sure if it requires membership.
It's only for public projects. You are a guest by not being, even if you're not a member directly, right? So you have like in GitLab.com, you can comment even though you're not a member of GitLab, so like of the GitLab org.
Yeah, I just didn't know if the API or REST API had the same like access controls, basically.
Yes, the role requirements would be similar for REST as well. As long as user is able to leave a comment on Epic, they'll be able to do so for their own user with using their own token via API as well.
Okay.
Which is why I would suggest that why not we just lock the discussion or not just the discussion, but make the Epic itself read only the moment user starts utilizing features that didn't exist in the legacy Epic before.
That would be a breaking change of the API, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, that may be hard to communicate, but at the same time, if they are using log discussions just because feature supports it, we can educate user like on UI anyways, we are going to be having new onboarding experience. So we can communicate that there are some of the features which are only available in Epic work items. Those can be consumed, assuming that you'll be able to access those features only via work items API. But again, like it's a product decision, just a suggestion from myself.
Just to confirm, the concern is that you can lock a work item epic, but somebody could still post, a non-project member could still post comment via the legacy REST API.
Correct, yeah.
So it effectively doesn't work. So we should just maybe remove this, like disable the feature in the UI maybe for epics. I don't know if this is widgetized anyway, locking, is it?
I don't have concern about the API because the API should no longer be visible. We remove that anyway. It's more the REST API that we could do that, which we can't break.
I was wondering, and thanks Amanda for answering, like how would somebody get into this scenario? Is it true that this is only basically via if someone's interacting with the REST API for epics after the experience is live, right? And through the REST API, they're locking discussions for these specific work items, like the epic ones.
The work item gets locked, but you can still post via the REST API over the legacy Epic API.
Correct. So it would be like somebody via the UI or via the GraphQL API for Epic, logging discussions, right? And then I'm trying to figure out like how someone would do this because they won't do it through the UI, right? Because
yeah, but they have already access to the work item UI. So let's assume we on GitLab org have a epic. It's already a work item UI. We lock it because people are spamming it. They could still go, like they can't now comment on the UI in the work item, but they can go to the REST API and then spam this epic through a legacy API.
Mm-hmm.
It's essentially a vulnerability at that point. We would have to patch anyway. I think knowing in advance we can't
Isn't
allow
this
that to be built.
existing?
Yeah,
Isn't this existing?
Yeah.
If it exists, it's a gap today. I say we document it in docs, that it's a known gap, and we move on.
The
It
only thing
doesn't
that's
exist today though.
Yeah, the
because,
only thing
like-
that's misleading is that like, oh, somebody believes they've locked it right through the UI, but then there's the ability to do this via the API.
Does this exist today on legacy epics?
It's not
No,
a problem
because-
on legacy epics because
Why?
you can't
You can't
lock
lock-
them. So
Because
you're
the
not
feature
under
doesn't
the
exist.
impression that you can lock them. So
But I guess no one is spammed. We don't have locking on epics because we've never needed it because we've never had that problem.
So is it even
Right.
available on the
That
REST
accurate?
API? If it isn't available today on legacy epics, how could they tap into it on the REST API?
I think the only problem in that is that it's misleading, right? Like we show the ability to lock in the UI, but then it won't actually do it all the way. So I think if that's the case, then can we just hide the ability to lock for epics?
Just
Either-
just hide the widget on the UI for epic record type. I think that's a fine workaround for now. It's not a parity issue.
Yeah,
how
but
does
then
that
yeah,
does
it
that
may
compare
pose
to,
another challenge as well, right? Like one can access work items API to log the discussion from API, and then it shows up as if it is logged on UI because the API was done. I mean, what I'm trying to say here is from discussions app itself, we can just remove the ability to lock via UI, but it would still be possible to log discussions using work items API. And then someone would do the same, like accessing the backdoor and then start posting comments on the epic which is locked.
Could we just disable the ability to lock discussions on work item epic types altogether? Because this will remain to be a problem until we get rid of the epics API, right?
or
just-
put a check in the REST API that since we now have anyway a work item epic for every legacy epic, put a check in the REST API that checks the locked status of the work
Yeah.
item.
Yeah, that's the idea I had. Maybe it's the simplest way. If you're creating a node for a notable, check that if the notable is an epic, access the work item and check if that work item. I don't know if the discussion in this case, if this we can check the discussion in the work item and if it's locked. Maybe that's better than removing the feature from the work item
I
side.
think that's better. It's less messy because we wanted to avoid like a bunch of type specific logic because we're gonna have to go back and clean all that up anyways at some point. So
Yeah, I'd rather make the old system more complex than the new one.
Okay, so we move forward with locking it on the REST API. Good. This was my initial proposal in the issue. Great. Because this makes the easiest way for all of us.
Is it technically the easiest solution as well, compared to like removing it from the work item side?
Yes, I think so, because it fits well with our hybrid sync approach, where we want to not change much code that we remove at some point. And the GraphQL APIs, we will get rid of them, but the REST APIs stick for a long time, and we just modify them once and never care about ever again, hopefully. One very technical thing, but easy to describe in the UI side. So there could be theoretically cases when we migrate everything that the ordering of hierarchies is not perfectly in sync. Might be that everything's fine, but worst case scenarios, like a few items are not in the right order, while we do the migration, something gets changed, and because work items and like this ordering depends on each other, could be the case. Would this be a blocker if the order is not perfectly in sync? It's like perfectly in sync for 99% on 9 cases, but maybe for a few epics, it's not perfectly in sync for the hierarchy. Would this be a blocker or not?
Yeah, so you're saying 99% is the accuracy we're going to get?
99.99, whatever. Like it's very high if you get the
If
syncing
it's,
right.
I mean, we don't want to change people's order, but if what we're talking about, if the magnitude is so small, I would be okay with it not being blocking. Melissa, what do you think? The order of people's hierarchy widgets could change, but it's less than 1% chance.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Okay. If it turns out that it becomes a higher, probability that this might change, I'd like to revisit.
Yeah, what we will do is we will do the migration on GitLab.com next 1 or 2 weeks, and then we will do a check like if it actually got out of sync. And if it doesn't get out of sync on GitLab.com, there's barely a chance that it gets out of sync on a self-managed instance.
Okay.
So is this correct that it's like if it's during the migration that they're reordering things that
Yeah,
it gets weird?
yeah, because
I'm fairly certain that most customers, when they're doing upgrades, like when are these migrations happening? Are they like in the background, or is it sort of like
background
an
migrations. But it could,
Okay.
it's also for GitLab.com a concern, right?
Yeah, so it would happen over many hours. Like how long would
Yeah, like 2-3 hours.
Oh, 2-3 hours is not bad. I think that could be manageable. I assume like when people do upgrades, especially the larger customers, like they do it in off hours, right? They're not doing it in the middle of the day when it's most people are working. So that will be interesting to see like what it looks like in real life with .com. Like how many mismatches do we end up with?
Good. I think we can move forward.
Yeah, I think we can jump on to discussions then, unless we want to discuss workstream 5 and 6.
Okay. Sorry. Anybody want to discuss that? All right. I jumped to the front because I have to drop. I'm sorry. So what I heard with the data migration is we landed in 17. Now the next step is 17.1 with the last step in 17.2. Are we still on track for that?
Yes.
Yes. Anything to change? Hybrid sync part is done. We did enable this globally already, I think.
No, this is not it's not this is the epic to work item sync that it's this is done. The hybrid
That's
sync
done.
is that's the union of existing data.
This is where we are now.
We can keep it as it is.
It's deprioritized. It doesn't take this much time. It's just whatever.
Yeah.
Any change to when we plan to ship to self-managed looks like towards the tail end of 17.2.
That's the little plan, yeah.
Accurate. And at the same time, general availability for SaaS. Or do you think that would come up?
Could be sooner, but let's see when the delegation is done.
Okay, and I think I need to create an issue for this, but I do want to do in-app messaging like 30 days before GA, but then this actually isn't accurate. Does anybody foresee a problem on the Epics page? And it's going to basically just bring awareness to a new experience is coming. You don't have to do anything. Here's some stuff to read about it for expectation setting. Any concerns with that in 17.1? Okay. And then can we start to expose the new experience for a handful of customer groups on SaaS in early 17.2?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the plan, but we can't give you any date now because
That's fine.
depends on the delegation work.
Okay, so I will just leave that where it is. Anything else here that you see that you think needs to be moved?
Amanda, have you considered kind of like some period of dog fooding? Is that like that?
Yeah, that's this. No, here, sorry. Oh, well, it didn't land, thank you. So this is supposed to be where we turn it on for internal.
Mm-hmm.
When would that land in your mind?
Is the
Nicholas?
requirement also only for like testing Epic work items or the whole syncing?
Ideally, it was for exposing the data as well.
With what do you mean with the data?
So they should have access to their epics as work items data migrated from legacy.
The full experience, right?
The full
The full
experience.
experience.
80% experience is doable, but so the problem is the delegation work.
Which one is the delegation?
This union existing
This.
data. So we could show them, and they could actually use that already. We could show them new Epic work items with the hierarchies, with dates, with description title, everything like that. But they would miss out on labels and notes from the previous ones, for example. Or like the filtering doesn't work yet for labels, stuff like this. But step by step, we can roll out the unionizing, and then they will see the nodes appearing. So they could test it already, to just not have 100% of the data available.
Yeah, we could enable it for groups with no epics internally, right? Because then when
Yeah,
they
but
start
that's
to
not what
create
I
them,
want to test.
Yeah.
I want to test
Yeah.
the migration.
Yeah, we would need an internal group that is like new and intends to create epics but hasn't done so yet. But if we
But
could
again,
find that,
we don't want to test somebody who's new and doesn't have epics. We want the people who have epics which have been migrated. That's the scenario we want to use for this first round.
yeah, I'm just letting you know that like if you wanted to run something earlier, that is an option.
Yeah. Okay, we'll come back to that next week.
Well, it sounds like that is like at the same time as enabling for new customers, like that 17.2 would be when the full experience is available.
Yeah, but I definitely want to have time on the internal groups testing data before I turn it on for any SaaS customers. Even if it's 2 weeks in between, I would like more than that.
Yeah, well, it sounds like then the turning on for new experience for customers needs to move.
To move, yeah, that's right. So where that was, then we move this over, basically. Yeah, okay. All right, we'll check in on that. And then we also need to check in on feature parity because we still have some outstanding feature parity stuff, but we can do that in the next one.
Just for the avoidance of doubt, like we could turn it on for new customers before the delegation is done. The problem with turning it on for new customers then is that we won't have tested it internally. Because to test it internally, to run our internal testing, we want full sync and delegation and everything. So that's why if we would consider doing an internal test only for what resemble new customers, i.e. groups with no epics or new groups that intend to create epics, then we could test it earlier, then we could release it to new customers earlier. Meanwhile, we would be working on the delegation work. So just to make sure that you're aware of that, like we could run 2 internal tests, one for one experimental new groups and so on, and then one full internal test for everybody if you wanted to get it to customers earlier.
Yeah, I hadn't planned on releasing to new customers, new groups. This step is existing customers wanting to preview or actually get started early as early adopters of the full experience.
Yeah, I understand that. just so that you're aware that it's a possibility. It would remove some risk, I suppose, as well. Like, you know, the more we can get into customers' hands, the less risk we're accumulating behind the scenes. But it's your call, man. It's whatever you think is the best thing to do.
I think it's risky to get into any customer's hands before we've tested it thoroughly, right? Like, there's a lot of edge cases, there's a lot of nits that can be found, right? This is a pretty complex thing. And I think it's better we find them than if a customer does.
Yeah, I fully agree. And that's why I think like it would need to be a, you know, it would need to be a group with no epics, but it would also need to be a group probably that isn't on the technical side of the company, maybe, you know, in a whole other part of the company where they just expect it to work. And then we would gather more data. Well, we're on to Deepika's point. Is she here?
She has joined, it
Yeah.
seems. So, okay.
Yes,
Right.
I am, but I've just joined by phone, so I can't really read. I'm just listening. So if there's anything I can,
Do you want me to
yeah.
verbalize, Deepika? I'm happy
Yes,
to do
please
so.
do so. Sorry. Yeah, thank you
Yeah,
so
no,
much.
that's fine. Okay, so Deepika wanted us to know that any backend work for including the choice of date widget to be supported in Epic work item needs to be completed by 17.1 in order for the front end to be completed in 17.2. So right now we get both the widget start and due date and roll updates as the supported widgets for work item type Epic. And there's an issue link there. And then we also need this migration to support dates widget as input. Maybe this was reported on. I was late for the meeting, so maybe this was reported on already in workstream 1. I'm not sure. Maybe Cassio, do you know what's the status there?
That's something that I'm working right now. Yeah, I'm planning to finish on 17.1, so should be fine.
Perfect. So would the create work item mutation also support the roll update widgets input? Because right now the create work item mutation doesn't support input to updates or start and due date as well. I couldn't see it.
It's supporting rollups, not the legacy, the simple widget, but rollups is there. Maybe it's not showing because it's marked as alpha, but I have used it to test the code, so it is running.
Sorry, it's not showing because
it's alpha. Maybe it doesn't autocomplete, but if you maybe I can send you one of the links that has the queries, and then you just paste the query and see if it works.
Sure. So I just checked on Explorer and I could not see the input. That's why
Yes,
I assumed maybe I'm missing something. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hidden when it's marked as alpha, but if you just enter the query and submit it, it should work. I will share the query with you.
Sure. Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, and additionally, it may also require front-end follow-up because we may have conditionals present at the moment, which checks based on, I think, Epic types. And the issue that Deepika is linked, I read through the discussion as well. So we can then get rid of those conditionals. And as long as the widget is sent by the backend, it will be rendered on UI as well.
Yes, that would be needed to be removed. Yeah.
John, yours says FYI, but in case you want to either verbalize or jump to the next one.
No, in the interest of time, I'll jump to the next one. Yeah, so like this section, issue specific discussion never gets used. And meanwhile, yeah, like we're coming to the end of the back end. I'm not going to say the end of it. We still have complex topics to solve, but we need to somehow pivot this meeting a little bit more towards UX and front end so that we can start to make sure that everything there is ready to go. The last thing we want is to get to the finish line with all the conversion on the back end and then realize we don't have a suitable or user experience and we have more work to do there. So what I'm suggesting is that we now start to check in on individual issues in this, especially ones that aren't tracked in some other work stream. I've come across a few, thanks to skip levels with Nicholas and Eugenia today, like a few other items that are already blockers, and Kushal raised these as well. Anything else, we could just put it in this section and have the DRI, the assignee, report on it. It would be really helpful, especially if these are blockers for GA if they're at risk. We're now down to 2 milestones, 17.1 and 17.2. Like, so if something misses a milestone, it's pretty serious for the outcome of the project. So with all that in mind, does anyone mind if we repurpose this section? Anyone think this is a terrible idea and we shouldn't do it?
It's the best idea.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Melissa. Always been my champion here. Okay, so Gabe, you have a point under Mario's one.
Yeah, just it's we set it as a deliverable for 17.1. It looks like there's an MR in progress. It's a little bit stale, but Don and I talked about it, and it's on the list of things we have to get done for 17.1. So we'll make sure it gets done in 17.1.
Yeah, and in case there isn't a follow-up front-end issue, we can utilize the second issue, which is unassigned currently, and have it addressed in 17.2, because once the mutation or the query supports parsing the URLs, we can start utilizing it for hierarchy widget in 17.2. Nicholas, additional items in case you want to verbalize.
There's one thing that we skipped for now, that you are not allowed to change a work item epic that has a legacy epic to another type. And I think we also prevent to change any issue type or any other type to an epic type, because it was easier for us in the beginning. The question is it a blocker? And I think with the current timeline, we could try to get it into 17.2 to work on this. But yeah, first I wanted to ask if this is a blocker.
Would promoting to epic an issue to an epic with the quick action still work today?
This is not available on work items because we only changed the type. So
yeah, I'm just saying from
promotion.
legacy, if I'm on a legacy issue and I hit the
That works.
want to promote it, okay, so that's fine. Then I was actually looking at this the other day. The next question is like, we'll have to solve for this before we migrate issues to work items to replace that promote to epic, which would be change type. So at that point, you would be able to change a work item. You would have to support be able to change a work item type issue to a work item type epic, but that doesn't have to be done before 17.2. But so I don't think it's a blocker. I guess just the question is, when we get to changing type, is there going to be any problems for epics that we need to like take into account?
Yes, we need to create the legacy epic then. And we need to destroy it if you change type again. Like if you change an issue work item to an epic work item, under like behind the scenes, we need to create a legacy epic. And if you change it from an epic work item to something else behind the scenes, we need to delete this legacy epic again.
Yeah. Okay.
And
it's
of course,
not a blocker for this for rollout. To answer.
Okay, good.
Maybe I could ad lib this, but like, how do we get this meeting to be more like even the next item about URLs, like this is not something that has come to this meeting. I'm not aware of it until Kushal raised it earlier this week. And this is what scares me, is that there's a conversation going on about URLs. The research isn't apparently done. How do we get this meeting to be more about those things, these remaining unknowns that might end up being blockers for the project or that might require acceleration now, like in 17.1?
We can start talking about them more. Like I've been working on this for the issues to work item stuff where there's just a list of all the behaviors I'm keeping track of. Kong helped put it together, so we can start talking about that. I would say like for this one, we can't do type specific URLs. It's not scalable because especially when you have custom work item types and you change the type name of issue to something else. So I think there's a little bit of pushback from UX on work items, and we're just wanting to validate that it's the correct generic term to use in the product and the UI, which I guess the URL is part of that. So I guess no one from UX is here to talk about that. That would be helpful. I don't see us changing to anything else. But I don't know.
Yeah, the concern here is mainly about if the decision is drastically different from what we are having right now, then that would mean that we are looking at a lot of changes and redirections happening in our implementation at the last moment, and that may slow down things. So even status updates on where we are at in the research and what we are leaning towards would be useful.
So maybe we can do some old school project management here and have like a section for blockers and a section for risks, right? Like this would be a risk because it's not blocking yet, but it's something to watch. Versus like some of the stuff that Gabe has highlighted or blockers, right? As far as experience goes. And we just track both of them, check in on the member meeting. And all of us are responsible for like putting things in these sections, right? Because there's not one person that knows all of it.
Yeah, that works for me. Like, can we have that? I've added them to that section below. Just change the titles, whatever we want. But if we could like make it so that like anytime you identify a blocker or risk or something, you put it in this section. Even if it's scheduled for 17.2 and it has no assignee, let's at least have it there so I can see it. And if something needs to be accelerated, if something's like, if we're getting to the end of 17.1 and we still haven't got some progress on something that's a blocker, then we can get more eyes on it. We can make decisions in this meeting, but we need to be aware of it,
Or could we create a little board and link to it and just like put labels on things?
I was just thinking about that. Like maybe I saw today that we have some work items related labels already. So maybe we could have like work items blocking, work items risk or whatever, and create a board and just label the issues and have better visibility, more dynamic than a Google Docs. And it's also.
Are you gonna assign me to it? I don't like that.
It says here in the agenda, you said, let's create a board.
I said, what if we had a board?
It's the same thing.
That's fine. I can create it with these issues. And then y'all can just tag more things.
Thank you.
In the backend meeting, we have the rule that the one who asks the questions needs to do the work.
I always forget about it.
Oh, I can tell you, sorry, I was looking for this. Using a URL with work items in it is not a blocker. I'm going to put in that decision at the end of my comment. So I don't think that this is a blocker. I don't think the research is a blocker, I would say, to derailing this, unless that decision has been reversed or is no longer valid.
Okay, cool. Good find.
All right. I think we are at time and we have no more items to discuss. All right. Thanks, everyone. And see you next week.
Ciao.
Bye.